Hi there, welcome to the archives. So this one is called "Is Shame Moving Jay Z Away Against or Towards Us?" It's part two from the one that I did previously. So Brene Brown says that shame moves us away against and toward others. Is it toward or towards? Away against and toward. And so I tend to work with those three. I came up with a fourth, which is across. But I'm going to stick with just Brene Brown's for now and just work with those three themes. And so in this one, I'm going to talk about how or which of the three was like what was happening here. If I'm saying that shame showed up in that Twitter space, how did it show up? Which of those three did it show up as, and what can we learn from that? And basically, I'm just using this is a pop culture example to to teach emotions like shame, to teach about it. You know what I mean? And so I keep thinking about how shame moved Sean Carter in relation to the poor people, or just people in general. No doubt, other wealthy people agreed or co-signed with him. Um, Other capitalists, whatever that, how you define that. I'm intentionally avoiding defining capitalism for several reasons. Okay, so you define it how you define it, but I'm sure that it brought some people closer to him and moved them towards, and then for others, it moved them away and against. And so I'm interested in how it moves us away. So for Brene Brown, shame that moves us away, basically we do that in hiding, we're covering, we are performing, we're wearing masks. We can't fully show up as ourselves, and so we just go ghost. Like we no longer exist because we can't show ourselves as we are. It's too shameful to show people who we are, and so we are just moving away from others because we can't be ourselves. We're hiding, we're covering, we're putting on masks, we're performing, right? That's one way in which shame shows up. I don't really see that in this clip. To an extent, I do, and where I see it, because you can't see his face, right? So you can be like, well, he's ashamed. Like, no, that's just how the platform is. In Twitter Spaces, you don't see people's faces; you just see their avatar, and so that's no fault of his own. You can't say that he's necessarily hiding. Is he performing? I mean, nobody can say for sure. I don't know that. He seems to be speaking from his truth and like with a lot of vulnerability and authenticity. He's being transparent and he's being honest. So again, we can't say that that's actually happening, that shame is moving him away from us in that way. I don't think that's happening. Although with a lot of celebrities, I'm sure that they know that any public encounter, they have to put up some sort of a charade regardless, right? Because they have an image to uphold. Again, he was vulnerable about his younger years, the things that he overcame. He talked about the Marcy projects. He's very clear that he feels like he's been shamed, but he doesn't talk about if he feels ashamed, if he's ever felt ashamed, and how he moved through that shame. That conversation doesn't happen here. And I think it might have been productive for him to actually move in a little bit closer proximity and like relate to us in that way rather than being like, you can't shame capitalists. Of course, we know that. But like, people are still going to do it. What is that shame doing, and how's that informing the conversation you're having? Right? He equated capitalists with slurs like the N-word. That reveals some hurt feelings right there. Like that's deep. The N-word, and I don't think it's in a way that like he's reclaimed it. It's used as a pejorative, right? It's like a negative thing. It seems like he's heard about being labeled as a capitalist. People have talked about this. I've seen people being like, yeah, he's reading our tweets and he's pretty mad. I've seen tweets like that. We out here seem to think that he has some hurt feelings. He might have a different take on it. Again, emotions are subjective. He's entitled to feel how he feels, and we can only observe on what we think is happening. He knows that in a sense, being called a capitalist is basically being like, you sold out. That's essentially what people are saying, right? Um, that like he's become more like them than us, whatever that division looks like. Um, but instead of saying that he resents being called that, or being honest that it shames him, um, to be compared to like his oppressors, for instance, he seems to projected it right back to us. Although the conversation wasn't framed as towards us, whoever us is, or we, whoever we is, it seems to be directed very specifically, I think, towards white people or white elites, or I have no clue. It's very ambiguous, but people are saying that it's also a direct shot at Black Twitter, at Black folks who critique him, and his not his work so much as like his role as a billionaire. So in my opinion, and again, who cares about my opinion, right? Like I know that. Hi, babe. Um, but it kind of, in that projection, it seems almost like he was saying that like we have failed him, right? And maybe he feels that like we have failed him in a way. We are the ones who kind of like sold out. We don't see what he's doing for us. We don't recognize all the work that he's doing for us. um he says you can, like, I can go back in the last year and list everything that I've done. Like, can you? Right? So is this assumption that um, he's doing more, and maybe perhaps he is, but like it really discounts a lot of the frontline work. I saw somebody tweet about like Ferguson, like activists have literally died for this work, for this revolutionary work, have died penniless, not penniless literally, but like broke or poor. And so, and okay, so you can also list what it is you're doing, but don't in that same vein devalue the work of a lot of activists who are working on the front line, who are getting arrested, who are getting pepper sprayed and threats and being surveillanced, and like, don't undervalue the work that they're doing, because you're in a position to be able to influence power in a different kind of a way. He chose violence, and I think he knows that. But at the end of the day, that's probably because he feels like people have chose violence towards him. That's fighting shame with shame, right? You want to shame me, I'm going to shame you even worse. That's how shame works. That's a second part that Brene Brown talks about, is shame that moves us against each other. There's that friction. When you're rubbing against somebody, there's friction. So that's shame that moves us against. We get petty, we like fight, we throw shame right back. Oh yeah? You think you're doing something for the movement? Let's compare our calendars. Who cares? Like, do you like the impact? Is the impact being felt? Are we pushing the needle? Then let's keep doing that, right? Again, none of us are above these dynamics. We all find ourselves doing it, myself included. I've shamed the rich, especially in an interview I did with Kirsten Brown on shame and money. I definitely just sent shame in their direction, and I stated it in that clip, and I didn't feel no ways, no qualms. So like, if it gets projected back at folks like myself, I mean, that's how shame works. I understand that, right? I expect that, because that's just how shame works. It's quite human of an experience. We all dance with shame. None of us are outside of shame. Even if we say that we're not ashamed, shame still shows up all over. We cannot, that's not how emotions work, right? Shame is a painful emotion. We all do some sort of avoidance of it somehow. We don't want to associate it with it. I bet you if you ask people like Jay-Z, if he, like, and other billionaires, if they're ashamed, they'd probably deny it, and maybe they're not ashamed. But at some point, I'm sure that they had to reckon with shame. Oprah talks about dealing with shame. There's a clip of her and Brene Brown that I watch very often for inspiration, and she talks about negotiating her shame, right? Specifically around her body weight, for instance, was one of the clips she talks about. Or when she was launching her network and everybody was telling her that she was going to fail, and how she internalized those messages. This is what I mean. Like, it helps us, like, at least we know that, like, you feel some sort of way about this position that you're in, and not just like, well, I'm making And again, a lot of hard work goes into this, no doubt, right? You don't just become a billionaire over time. But again, like, no one is self-made, as people have said before, meaning that there are others who have helped to become a billionaire. They're likely still living in poverty themselves. I don't know about you, but maybe it's Aquarius in me, but that thought of like using others for financial gain, that makes me sick, because I think about the ways in which I have like try to get ahead and how I sabotage others. I don't really think I do that. Um, Maybe I have, and people can talk about their experiences. I definitely throw people under the bus, right? I definitely throw people under the bus, and I get thrown under the bus as well too. Um, but like, that's uncomfortable. Being like, I got ahead and I had to do some dirty things to get ahead. Most people don't want to talk about that. They don't even care. They just like forget about it, and like they're just so disconnected. There's no empathy. It's like this very narcissistic, I don't care, I got ahead, I'll do whatever by any means, 50 Cent, get rich or die trying, right? I mean, that's not me, which is why I'm still broke and I don't get ahead. So kudos to those who are able to do that. My subconscious is obviously pushing a lot of that potential away. And I've seen people online be like, you can't get rich, complaining and being resentful of rich people. I know that. Right? I definitely know that. I know that I sabotage myself in a lot of ways because I have to heal and work on some of these money wounds. Right? I have a South Node, I believe, in Taurus, meaning that in this lifetime, I need to get comfortable with money and with luxury and being the nice things. You know what Taurus are known for. They like all the nice things, right? They want to feel good. They want to smell good. I struggle with that. And that's a lot of, not just self-hate, but just in like messaging. I've been told, there's a lot of work that I need to do around that when I'm completely honest about it. But it's also part of my practice. That's also, as a Black feminist, who is critical of capitalism, who is critical of greed and the 1% and people over profit. Like, I also don't mind being broken poor at this point if it means that I'm maintaining my integrity until I figure out how I can get rich or make it ahead and like live a more luxurious lifestyle that it's comfortable, that I'm okay with, that I know that I can sleep at night, that is in alignment with what I'm here to and sent to do. I haven't connected all of those dots yet, right? And so I've shamed rich people my whole life. And the idea of becoming rich myself, it makes me feel like a hypocrite. I'm going to be honest and say that. I don't think a lot of people, like, does Jay-Z ever feel like a hypocrite? Critiquing the system and then all of a sudden being, not even just like being part of the system, but being so few as like a Black billionaire. What does that feel like? What does that do to a person's psyche? When you are growing up talking shit about somebody, complaining about something, being resentful of them, and then you're able to manifest that, what does that do to the psyche? How does that push you away from where you came from? Can you comfortably go back to where you came from without feeling some sort of discomfort? And this is off topic from what I wrote, but it physically makes me sick. I haven't negotiated that yet. And so I'm not trying to project my stuff onto Jay-Z, even though I still am, right? It's complicated. Again, we know that. The question is, how do we become what it is that we've shamed? How do you become what it is that you've shamed, right? For people who are growing up like, I'll never be like my parent. What is that like to become a parent and to see yourself in your parents? I don't know what that's like because I'm not a parent. But I'm sure at some point there's something you said you would never do. P-Valley talked about this episode. There's an episode where Mercedes was driving her daughter to the abortion clinic, and her daughter's like, when I have a daughter, like whatever, I will never be like you. And Mercedes is like, that's what I said. What is that moment like when you realize that you've become that thing you said you would never become? Let's have conversations about that, because I think that's what makes a lot of us uncomfortable, right? Because we don't know what it's like. We've been critiquing capitalism, and all of a sudden, I see people critiquing Jay-Z, and like they have brand endorsements, they're living nice, they're taking trips I'm like, but like, You're talking about him, but what about your lifestyle? You're clearly deeply caught into capitalism as well too. You are low key a capitalist, and like here, and like now he has billions of dollars, and you're making $1 million, or you're making six figures. I ain't making nothing, so like I'm looking at everybody like you guys are all capitalists. Even the person that's making $100, I'm like. So again, don't take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because I'm not in a position to talk about any of this, but I'm still going to talk about it. Okay, so does he feel like a hypocrite, like a sellout? How does he overcompensate? Yeah, that's what I want to talk about this clip. I think it's a double-edged sword. I'm gonna wrap it up because I'm saying the same thing. My uncle told me that when I make a home run, I don't think I made a home run, but I need to let it land. So I'm gonna go, but all I wanted to end with is that this is messy, it's complicated. If we want to forge a new path forward, we need to have these conversations, because I've seen people like Black Lives Matter founder, Toronto-based Black Lives Matter, Raven Wings, talk about how it's time that we stop expecting activists to be poor and broke. I've seen Raven talk about how the struggle to liberation should not mean that those that are fighting for change continue to suffer and stay poor, right? So what does that look like when those who are on the front lines doing the work are saying, like, pay us what you owe us? Women are saying, give us the same amount of pay as men. That is all conversations of capitalism. We cannot avoid it. But what does that look like equitably, right? It's not a critique of being poor per se, but there's no reason that like folks like Henrietta Lacks should have died poor because she's generated so much wealth for the medical field. There's no reason Marsha P. Johnson should have died poor because she contributed so much to the revolution and trans rights. There's no reason Zora Neale Hurston should have died broke. Like, we get it. The laundry's done. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, I was going to raise Black Lives Matter Patrice colors here. Got dragged up and down the streets, right, for buying all those homes. And I don't even think it was necessarily about using the money. Again, I stay out of this because I'm just like literally trying my own business and like it's so messy. I don't know what is happening. But again, at what point? Where do we draw the line? Where can we say this is comfortable, right? We're saying pay us, give us what we owe because we contribute to these movements. We are shifting culture. We need to get paid. But then, like, at what cost? What is okay? Would we be happy if like Patrice purchased tiny homes instead of mansions? Would that have made us feel a little bit more better? If it was just one mansion and not three or however many was sold, I don't know. But like, at what is okay? Because I don't know where to draw the line, right? Or where others think I should draw that line. We are caught in this dilemma. We're definitely caught in this dilemma, and I think it makes people feel guilty and it makes people feel ashamed when they are advancing, and there is a lot of survivor's guilt when they are leaving, quote unquote, wherever it is they came from. I hate the idea of elevation, but like at some point you are elevating, right? So I'm gonna call it a day. There's so much more. Read the blog for the full thing. All to say, we're all engaging capitalism at some point. We're all exchanging something. We're exchanging services. Whether it's like monetary, whether it's we're selling our art or our bodies or our intellectual property. We are selling something. We are selling stuff. We are exchanging stuff. It's capitalism as we know it right now. The old ways, they used to barter and trade, right? Before, in Canada and the United States, when the Pilgrims first arrived, the indigenous folks were trading. So there was, even in Ghana and parts of West Africa and other places, there was trade, right? So it's not to say that we were never people weren't working and that they weren't exchanging things. It's just we weren't working with money as we know it. And now we have crypto and all of these different, the metaverse. There's like so many things that I'm not even educated about. And financial literacy is not my forte. So absolutely, if you want to come for me for that, come for me, because that's something I'm still learning on. But what does the future look like, right? You cannot become a revolutionary and a capitalist. Perfect. Capitalism is something, it's on its way out. But what is the alternative? Can you be a revolutionary and a fill in the blank? What does that fill in the blank look like? How do you be a revolutionary and an activist? How do you address all of these systemic issues while still having something to eat? While still building intergenerational wealth for yourself and your communities, specifically in the context of Black Americans, where so much of American society was built on enslaved laborers, right? Trains in Canada, Chinese folks were literally building our railroads and our communities here, from British Columbia all the way across Canada. Like, what does that look like to be given back and to build intergenerational wealth in capitalism and then outside of capitalism? I'm going to end it there because, like, I'm going on. And at this point, it's 20 minutes and I'm just saying the same shit. So no shade, no disrespect. At this point, I'd literally rather be poor than to be wealthy and, like, feel like I'm taking advantage of certain people. It feels very uncomfortable for me, which is why I don't make certain moves. I don't move as fast as certain people. Like, there isn't that urgency for me like other people think there should be. That's also my politic, and like I pay the consequences. And people are like, "Well, you're doing yourself." I get it. I know that. I'm not. You don't hear me complaining. I literally was like homeless for 4 days, and nobody heard me complaining. I would go do as I come and go as I need, because I know that I put myself in that position. I know that I'm struggling with what it would look like to have a different lifestyle. That is something that I am working through right now. And all I'm saying is I wish that other people were also honest about what that process is, right? Emotions work will do, but it's not going to get us there. Structural and systemic, that's actually what we need to address. Even though it's interwoven throughout this conversation, I would be remiss to say that emotion is not going to do us jack shit at the end. Also, do the work, but like it's not going to give us liberation. It's not totally going to get us free. If anything, it's just going to get us caught in our feelings. And so we have to learn to do certain things at the same time that might look contradictory. Dialogue is important, but like so is legislative change. So is equal distribution of wealth. So is canceling student debt. Who cancels? Like there's just all like free healthcare, accessible, affordable housing. All of these things are like the more pressing needs. Not so much whether Jay-Z feels shame or not. And so after all of that, after the last 2 episodes where I'm saying he needs to talk about shame, I'm also saying like we don't really care, and like also shut up and all of it. That's typical blog post. So I wanted to quickly add one more thing around the point of like, what does exchange look like that we'd be happy with outside of capitalism? Because again, we still have to find jobs, we still have to sell art, we still have to do all of those things. We can't escape capitalism and the problems that come with it. So where do we go from here, right? I wish instead that Jay-Z would have addressed some of the complexities and how he as a billionaire is struggling with that tension. I think I would have appreciated it if he talked more about building shame resiliency enough to say like, yeah, I'm proud of what I have, but it sucks that I left others behind, and try as I may, the system is set up that they'll continue to be left behind, right? What would it have looked like if he, instead of sitting with like the heads of NFL people, he was sitting down with indigenous communities globally, right? Learning about how we can use some of the old ways in a new way to move forward, right? Without all of that extractive stuff. Paying them for their labor and having that conversation. I don't know. That's what I wanted to add is, like, I'm looking to, like, Octavia Butler to figure out the future. What are some future futuristic elements that we can bring into this conversation to move forward. I don't have any solutions myself. Does he? Do those critiquing him have alternative solutionists? What? Alternative solutionists? Alternative solutions. I know abolitionists are having these conversations. I know Afrofuturists are envisioning a different way forward. But I just wish there would have been more conversation around collaboration, around figuring out different solutions. So I wanted to raise Indigenous science and Indigenous knowledges, because we can learn a lot from Indigenous communities. And I think often we erase and write them out of these convos, even though they've always been saying that some of these ways don't work. So maybe it's high time we start listening to them. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. What is okay? Where will we be okay? And will we ever agree on what okay is? Okay, have a good day. Until next time, in solidarity.